Welcome back to another edition of the We Are Change talk show. Thanks for joining me. It's Wednesday the 18th of April. We have a lot of news to get through. President Trump has launched airstrikes on Syria. A lot of his prominent conservative supporters have turned against him after this action. I can assure the viewers I was never a big Trump supporter. I wasn't on the Trump train, so to speak. I know he's a lot better than Hillary Clinton, but I also understand that there's a shadow government operating behind the scenes, pulling the strings. With that being said, it's time to start taking calls. On the line we have Pauly Be from Western Australia. Go ahead, Pauly. You're live on the air.
Great, Jeff. Hello to everybody at We Are Change in Melbourne. I'd like to thank yourself, and I'm in awe of your efforts, man. I appreciate everything you do. I'm happy to call you a friend.
That's very lovely to hear, and I'm glad you phoned in through on the hotline. So you've been active at trying to set aside some complaints that you've had against the government and put forward complaints that you've had. You decided to set up HR4TV. How did that come into existence, and what got you started with your activism, Pauly?
I think probably close to about 45 years ago. Initially, it started basically when I was involved with a personal injury, which under the Guardian Administration Act of Queensland was brought out in 2000. They actually welcomed me with my what do you call it?
You suffered a personal injury, and that was that took a toll on your life.
And they robbed me from that, and in the meantime I started with I've been arguing with the government for years because people are incapacitated to have their money stolen and whatnot, and it went on when I just started with HR4TV. That was 22 years ago. I've been doing that. I've been in touch with, been in conference, been to many what do you call it, Law Reform Commission reviews on the actual laws and whatnot, as the only incapacitated person involved, and I was completely just shunned. People who are incapacitated tend to be deemed as not having a voice.
So you're absolutely, they feel like they've been silenced.
Fighting the guardianship regime to try to look after or try to give a voice to everybody who's incapacitated or anyone who's struggling to be heard.
So you're involved in you had a personal injury. This was catastrophic. You suffered multiple violations of human rights yourself.
I suffered a fractured skull, and it took me 9 months to learn to speak again. Since then, I've got a trade now. I'm a licensed painter, working in the pool at the moment. But I consider that could be incapacitated means that basically I don't have I've got a license to kill, meaning that I could shoot someone and say, well, they're saying to me that you don't know the results of your actions, so therefore we can take your money off you. But if I go shoot somebody, you guarantee that I'll put that against me, you know what I mean? So when it comes to money, it's worth more than a human life.
Yes, and that's very serious, having a severe brain injury and fractured skull, and it took you 9 months to recover from that. You were able to gain compensation for that accident, and then that helped you get on the road of the healing process.
I was awarded $770,000, and it was straight away, it was put into a trust fund with the Trust Company Limited. Now, if you know anything about the Guardian Administration Act of 2000 in Queensland, that involved, now you used to have a Guardian Administration Tribunal, that evolved to what now is the QTAB, Queensland Civil Administration Tribunal. They approached them. The only reason I settled on the day at court, because my mother had cancer and she'd been suffering for 7 years at a time. 2006, when we went to court finally after 1997, and I settled in court because my mum, she was ill, obviously, with lung cancer.
There was a number of tragic events that were happening all at once.
My hope was to be able to walk out that door and go buy a house for her, to live in, her own house. And then she was denied that, and I was denied that because I couldn't afford one.
This is tragic.
My barrister was up in Cairns, there's a Cairns, there's in Townsville. The Company Limited, which is based in Sydney, and they're all around Australia. Just recently they've been taken over by another financial mob for some reason. Strangely, only in Sydney, the rest is still bars. And they said I couldn't afford to buy a house. I could have bought two and I could have been one, you know. And since they're going to struggle to feed me $400 a week at one stage, pay my rent, whatever else, and I wanted to buy a bed. I had to go to the tribunal to argue to be able to buy a bed.
And no monetary allowances, no compensation can repair the damage that was done to your skull and what you've been through as a result. So, you know, it's not like you're actually gaining because you've actually lost significantly with that accident. And so the money was locked away in a trust and you're not able to access it. That's correct?
That's right, absolutely. And it's all gone now, of course, after the financial crisis. And it reminds you, like 2006, 2007, I won the money. By 2010, it was all gone. And basically, it's all gone. You can sit there and say, I'm going to put some money in there. And it's gone. That was basically it. Not even an apology. All I wanted to buy a house. Nothing's more secure than a block of land. You know, they don't make more property. You know, and what do you work for all your life? Just to have a home.
That's right. Some stability that you needed. Yeah.
Yeah. But I might just say just quickly that you know, going through this struggle over the 20 odd years, you realise that it's not just a single. You know, there's just so many people. I was at the Law Reform Commission reviews.
Yes.
2008, 2009. Well, actually started at 2007. Went to 2011. I think they kind of come out with their recommendations.
Okay.
I was the only person that's incapacitated, deemed as incapacitated. Everybody else in there, of course, you know, you talk about people incapacitated, can't wipe their own butt. Now, these people are getting robbed, not only from their carers, not only from their support crew or whatever else, but the people that are paid to do it.
It's absolutely heartbreaking.
This is what I feel like. You know, I'm not crying poor or that. My mission is to fight. You know, and you know they've robbed my mother. They robbed her last dying wish. And just last year, I found out my father was dead. The public trustee didn't tell me about it. You know, we had a fallout with my father and I. You know, after all my experience with my family.
You've been through an enormous amount of turmoil, Pauly.
Yeah, and they buried my father without even telling me. They just kept using his money up there and still fighting that one now. But my mission is more so setting up HR4TV for other people to do it, and I'm going to go up these motherfuckers' heads.
It just shows to show how strong you are, and you created the group to assist people with dealing with extortions of human rights, denial and abuses of vulnerable people, because you've had your human rights violated, you know how it feels. So you wanted to protect others and save them so they don't end up on the same road and ultimately reach the same conclusions. That's right.
Absolutely. Jeff, that's spot on there, mate. Now, can I just tell your followers, you know, the most important thing to do right now, guys, is to network. Myself, you know, the legendary Jeff. You know, and we need to network and need to get together, okay, because we have no voice if we're all single. You know, we have, you know, gay rights by themselves. We have, rights for every single little department. You know, and when I created all, when I, you know, developed this HR4TV, it was about everybody trying to get underneath the same umbrella, you know?
Yes.
Because we have a huge voice if we all stand together. Okay, we need to get rid of all the racism or the religion and you know, the politics. To stand together as humans, you know, and realise that we're all the same.
And I'm very proud to have We Are Change working alongside Human Rights for the Vulnerable. I got involved with HR4TV quite a while ago, and some of the work that they're doing over there, they're making a big difference. And to have that unity when a lot of groups are all connecting, and the solidarity is very important, isn't it, Pauly?
Bless you, Jeff, mate. You're spot on, mate, you know, and, you know, I've got a tear on my eye. You know? But it's so true, you know, we just need to stand together, you know, we need to have an umbrella to stand together. We're creating new groups and new political parties, you know, reinstate the Constitution. The Constitution's never done anything for us in 200 years.
Yes.
Okay? You know, and you know, people are Muslims are coming, but hey, you're bombing them. Where the hell are they supposed to go? Alright, we can go on to this. I mean, like, you know, the thing is, though, my view, my aim, my prayers are all for the people that are suffering in the meantime, you know? You know, the guys, I mean, like, let's talk about West Papua, you know? They've forgotten Anzacs. We have an Anzac Day coming up soon.
That's right. The Papua conflict is an ongoing conflict between the Indonesian government and portions of the population of Western New Guinea. This is devastating. You've been active in this campaign trying to help some of the people that are suffering and victims of this crisis. It's basically, it comes down to a genocidal campaign that's being run here. That's what's happening, isn't it, Pauly?
But it's a disgrace. I mean, like, you know, these guys carried us, you know. They carried us, and we forget about them. They're closer to, you know, the north coast of to Australia than any other neighbour. And we're not even bothered about them. We're talking over 500,000 have been killed, murdered, slaughtered by the Indonesian army.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's what's happening.
And we're just turning a blind eye to it. And everyone goes on about Anzac Day, yay. Remember the fallen. Now, the Anzac spirit is not about just turning around and leaving your mate behind.
That's
so anybody
right.
who wants to call himself an Aussie should take some fucking... should be mad about this whole situation.
Papua New Guinea is one of our closest neighbours, if not the closest. And, you know, you can basically canoe over there. I mean, that's how close it is. And people, and people just seem like they aren't too concerned. They're mainly focused on what's happening in their own backyard.
Well, that's right. You know, and the thing is, these guys carried us, and like the Australian spirit is not one to let a friend down or let a mate behind. Now, everyone's getting full up with shit with, you know, the sports and whatever. Hey, I love football, I love rugby league or AFL and all that stuff. Well, the Commonwealth Games are on right now, great. But, you know, these things are just distractions.
That's right. People need to use critical thinking and focus on what's happening, not be blindsided by distractions, which seems to be prevalent in the current climate that we're in. I don't know, but maybe people, it's a lot easier for them to get carried away in something and let their mind run off instead of focusing on some of the matters, because they just don't want to face the severity of the whole situation.
Yep, absolutely, Jeff. Now, you know, most importantly now, The Art of War is a brilliant book. If you ever get a chance, any of your readers get a chance to read that, please do.
Are you referring to Sun Tzu, The Art of War?
Oh, of course.
Yeah, excellent book.
Yes, absolutely. Please, I recommend anybody read it. Now, this is kind of has a major play in the way things are going. You know, obviously, I've been going through this thing for 20 odd years with my own personal campaign. However, you know, it's a matter now, and if you read about it, is basically enlightening people, encouraging people, and we're moving on. You know,
a lot of wise philosophy, isn't it?
You know, yeah. I mean, with the internet, I mean, there's no excuse to be ignorant. There is absolutely no excuse to be ignorant. But I mean, a lot of people get wrapped up in the, you know, we've been doing it 9 to 5 for 100 years, whatever, you know, and, you know, women cook dinner and men, you know, go to work, whereas there's change. However, hopefully, in the fundamentals of their thought patterns, man, you know, we may plant a seed and people may get motivated, you know.
Yeah, and cultures are evolving.
Yeah, we're going to be more understanding and
that's
more
right.
compassionate with people and just give them time to get mad.
And I believe it was Sun Tzu that said, if you're outmatched and your enemy and your opponent is too big and too strong, retreat, reevaluate, formulate a plan, and come back and attack. The government has declared war on the human population. They're doing it in multiple ways: weather weapons, food, weather warfare. You can see it through the vaccines. And we have to formulate a plan as people and come back and strategize and figure out a solution on how we can come up against such a tyrannical government and have a positive outcome.
Yeah, that's right. You know, we need to think smart, but the thing is that we need to gather the troops, you know.
Yeah.
So this is what HR4TV, Human Rights for the Vulnerable, is about. It's basically educating people and trying to unite everybody, you know.
That's
without
right.
religion, without politics, without race, we're all the same, okay? So, you know, everyone has their own ideas or whatever else, but hey, it hasn't been working for 2018 years.
It's actually a very similar agenda, HR4TV, as what we're doing here at We Are Change, exposing the corruption that's being endorsed by the government, human rights abuses, and the ignorance of the government that is supposed to be here to protect the most vulnerable and not attack us through GMO food products Monsanto not hit us with their poison vaccines, targeting us with fluoride in our water and weather weapons. We need to come up and rise up against this evil government as people and work together. And that's what Human Rights for the Vulnerable, the groups that you've created, are actually doing. It's helping people connect and work together and definitely make plans that are going to affect change. And what I like what you've done, you've set up multiple chapters to cover every single specific violation that has occurred, whether it's medical tragedies, kidnappings, whether it's legal situations. Explain through some of the groups that you started and exactly what you hope to achieve with that. Because I know there's many chapters within the framework of Human Rights for the Vulnerable. You're actually catering to specific groups, which I think is very important.
Thanks, Jeff. Look, like I say, it all started with the guardianship regime, and when I first started up the Human Rights for the Vulnerable, I was sent a link by a anonymous crew regarding Clint Palmer, who's been medically been kidnapped for
Yes.
17 years on basically it's got the wrong guy.
I've been paying attention to this story as it's starting to emerge. The person was healthy and fit, and then they were locked away in a Queensland mental health ward,
Yep.
and then they just started to deteriorate rapidly, and now they're just a skeleton of what they were before. Is this the story you're mentioning, Pauly?
That's just one, and
I've seen the photographs.
People who've actually helped get out of these institutions, who
Yeah.
are told, because it all comes down to their authority. Nobody has the authority to do this. I mean, they said, what's your authority? Oh, well, we were granted authority by, the king. And who the fuck cares about that? You don't have authority over me. And Glenn Roberts Greg Roberts is
Yeah.
your name, but Glenn Roberts is your name, but Glenn Roberts is the, relation to, Mr. Palmer, He's been advocating for this for a long, long time. Now, as Jeff, we have the YouTube channel, and a lot of that's all on there as well. And I'd like to just
We'll put up any links to this story that you can provide. Yeah, if you can provide any further information to We Are Change about the Greg Roberts story, we definitely use all our resources to return this man home to his family, because nobody should be held a prisoner indefinitely in a hospital asylum. This is a very extreme case, and we'd like to do anything we can, and I'd like to do anything I can in my power to try and help this man. We'll provide any links to that. And do you know the state of his health and his current situation at present? Yeah.
Basically medicated. When you're medicated, you have no urge to eat or get up out of bed and stuff like that. He's medicated, has been medicated for over 17 years. So he's deteriorating. He's not well.
Have they set a release date? Is the family...
Sorry?
Have they set a release date? Is his family making regular visits?
No, the thing is, Jeff, is that they've got him because they realise now, I've got all the details. I've received all the details from Glenn Roberts, who's Mr. Palmer's, relation.
Yep.
Detailing the fact that Glenn was actually locked up, because what had happened is girlfriend or ex-wife had hooked up with a fella, and they were using his Medicare as they were going around, doing drugs and stuff like that, going to the chemist and buying what it went. So they're using that against Glenn.
It's quite alarming. It got my attention straight away when I looked at some of the key facts of this case. If you could please forward any information that could assist me, and hopefully we can get this man released and get him back into safety. Nobody should be forced medicated. And I've seen the photos. He was healthy. He had a tan. He seemed happy. And now it's like he's very delusional and held captive. And there's been no due process. This is very shocking. It's a nightmare. I couldn't picture being stuck in that situation.
On the YouTube channel, some of the videos that have been put up by the family, you know.
Yeah, I'll be putting links in the description for the viewers at home. What does the future hold for human rights for the vulnerable, and where can you see the groups heading?
I have a 2-year plan.
Yep.
Yes, I have a 2-year plan. As I say, right now it's all about unifying, networking, educating people that you know haven't had the opportunity or are trapped in you know the society we consider life.
Mm-hmm.
It'll take a good year before that happens, and at the end of the day, I'd like to have or be a part of finding the right people, networking to the point where we can bring on the biggest fucking protest Australia's ever seen.
Yeah.
Along the lines of,
I admire your passion. And I'd like to say once again, I'm proud to be a member of Human Rights for the Vulnerable and look forward to collaborating on future events. It's a powerhouse of activists, concerned citizens, vulnerable people that have been suffering for a large amount of time and want to see changes occur. And you've been an advocate of a lot of positive campaigns, Pauly, and that deserves a lot of respect.
Yes, like I say, I'm in awe and appreciate and love and respect to all your followers, listeners right now. Let's get together, right? Let's make a change.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate you phoning through here on the hotline.
Thanks for your call, Pauly. Next on the line we have Steve from Queensland.
I know with the MK Ultra, like it says, MK for mind control of the German spelling.
That's right.
Because it's based from the German scientists that came over with Operation Paperclip. And interesting, Operation Paperclip was originally called Operation Overcast.
That's interesting.
Chemtrails, dumping chemicals into the sky, which is what they're doing a lot now with the chemtrails to affect us. And they're talking about dumping lithium now in the sky.
It's shocking.
The nanoaluminium, the mycoplasma, all the other nasties.
And for the listeners that don't know, MK Ultra was a project that they said was declassified, and it was a project that ceased to continue. But it goes against all the information that's been presented. This is an operation that has continued, and we have evidence to back that up.
And when the controller dies, the subject then starts recovering memories, and I believe Serrani was supposed to have killed Blade for the death of John Kennedy, Robert Kennedy.
Yep.
He recalls actually being in a shooting gallery, a shooting range, and that's what he thought he was doing, firing blanks, of course, at Robert Kennedy, while the real killer shot him from the back.
And it was, that's shocking news. And, you know, it was Kennedy that made the announcement. He finds secret societies repugnant, and they all should be exposed for who they really are. And that was a statement and a speech that obviously had a big playing in his downfall and his demise.
And that was John Kennedy as well. And interesting, he was killed on the 22nd of the 11th.
Yeah.
Very powerful numbers in the Illuminati, Master Builder and Messenger of Light number. And also I saw a recent one where George W. Herbert Walker Bush was standing at the bottom of the book depository, where the other patsy was, and I'm just trying to think of his name, Lee Harvey Oswald.
Yep.
And he'd apparently gone up for a job interview, realised it was some sort of setup, ran downstairs as the motorcade come past. He was out the front of that shop. He wasn't up the top of the building. And also George Herbert Walker Bush was standing there too, and he said he cannot remember where he was that day.
That's right, and there's been...
Everyone else remembers where they were when Kennedy went at that age.
Exactly, everyone around the world remembers those days.
He was killed.
That's exactly right.
George Herbert Walker Bush can't remember, but he's there standing there at the bottom of that building.
And they've had expert marksmen that have tried to recreate that shooting that Lee Harvey Oswald tried to let off those procession of shots, and they've tried to recreate that to no avail. It just goes to show that something is false and misleading with the story that was published.
And it looks like it was a combined effort too with also the driver shooting Kennedy from the front and blowing the back of his head out. And of that?
Yeah, I have. It's
they block off the driver and the Secret Service agent at the front of the limousine.
Yep.
When you see that section, the Secret Service agent grabs the steering wheel while the driver gets out his gun with a silencer and shoots Kennedy from the front. And then, of course, since then they've had the spin story about the CIA in front, or Secret Service, their gun going off, or rifle going off, and that's why Kennedy was shot from the front. But of course, then his brains disappeared, the evidence, and they put a body double in, so much cover-up. And I believe Dulles was heavily involved, George Bush Sr., both in the Skull and Bones, secret, order of death, all the and Johnson, heavily involved with the murder of Kennedy.
That's right. And Kennedy wanted to abolish the Federal Reserve. He wanted to have a currency that was independent and that was backed by gold, and that was a big factor in his assassination.
Definitely, when he stepped on the toes of them and the people wanting the war, he was signing his own death warrant, unfortunately.
Exactly right. There's been many books and publications on it. Many scenarios put forward, bullets ricocheting from bridges, secret audience members filming the event that were managed to flee without being questioned. A lot of stories that don't match up. It's
20 people around the motorcade that saw it close hand also died within 12 months. And the odds were millions to one that those 20 people suddenly meet with a strange accident, sudden death.
Yeah, it goes to show there's a hidden agenda at play here. They're trying to silence people.
Like Hillary's body bag, it's massive now. There's more than 50 people that she's had murdered. Her tracks.
There's a big list of people that have been assassinated and murdered from the Clinton family. Seth Rich was a very popular story, wasn't it?
I don't know a lot about Seth. I've only just started to hear about it a little bit recently.
Yeah. It's shocking. A lot of people with answers and information, and they got the dirt on the Clintons. They don't seem to last very long, Steve.
No, and they're often killed on the way to the courthouse.
Yeah, that's right.
And in the robberies where there's nothing taken.
Exactly.
Strangeness there.
That's right. A lot of it definitely needs further investigation required. Now,
even the Oklahoma building was related to the Clintons, having evidence there to convict them. And when the bombs went off inside the building, or the large bomb went off inside the building, the main thing was, rather than rescue people first, was to get the evidence that was going to convict the Clintons, get that and destroy it, then go in and get the two other high-tech bombs before they could rescue people. So all that was what do you call it? They wanted to make that a priority rather than rescue the children in the kindergarten. And then the truck bomb was just used as a distraction, whereas the real bombs are already planted inside the building. The two that didn't go off were whisked away, spoken about on the night's news, but then never addressed after that.
And a lot of employees were told not to show up at work that day. A lot of it, you can see why it becomes a conspiracy when there's just so much mystery that's the whole event is shrouded in, isn't it?
I like the book as well, The Final Jihad, that was written 2 years before the event by the governor's brother. And in the book, it's written to the Knights of the Secret Circle, where Tom McRae blows up the Alfred P. Murrah building. And here it is that they blame a guy called Timothy McRae 2 years later.
Yeah,
but it's all written about 2 years before and published in the book The Final Jihad. Frank Keating, I think it is, the author.
And it seems like some of the voters, they weren't even deterred by this. And on the day, they went into the polling booths and they still voted for Hillary. I don't know what it is.
Even 20 or 30% of them believe that she's involved with the Pizzagate, and they still vote for her.
I mean, where is the sense in that?
To me, it's a cultural Marxism trait. That they're blinded and got blinkers on. way to think to me.
It is, and there's no self-preservation, because if you know that the Clintons are based on war, that's where they get a lot of their funding from. That's their agenda, is to push this war machine, and people still push their votes forward. I mean, it just goes without saying. Where is the sentiment?
Libya's her war, and she said, we came, he died, he died, you know, about...
That's right. Yeah, that was what she said.
Just a brutal, heartless thing she was.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's been a lot of strange footage of her as well. Some people have suspected might be an MK Ultra programming anomaly, where she's
gone into some strange things, hasn't she? Sort of frozen and then coughed up those balls. Did you see? I don't know if you ever seen that.
Yeah, I have.
Coughs up those two things into the glass.
It's
They're quite a large thing. They're almost like a table tennis ball.
It's very unusual, to say the least. Yeah, it's very, very strange. And when there's confetti and balloons falling from the ceiling, she's gazing up with her mouth wide open, just staring like she's been put in some sort of spell.
Yes, and then the husband sort of tries to grab her and make out everything's okay, but she's in like a zombie sort of state.
Absolutely.
I know that, not Kathy O'Brien, but Arizona Wilder, she talks about how in the MK Ultra they use coloured ribbons to trigger and to, you know, get the children to manipulate them using different colours.
That's right, there's
going on.
Absolutely, there's colours.
Something to do with the colours of the confetti.
Yep, and there's also keywords as well. That's another one that the handler would use with the programming. Certain words that trigger a response from the subject. I've seen one particular piece of footage, the words Holy Ghost were mentioned, and then the candidate was put in a complete trance, not blinking, completely frozen, like stone, like a statue, for at least a minute straight. I mean, then that's real evidence. And luckily, there's people with camera phones nowadays. They're quick to film, put it straight on YouTube. You know, let the world see it.
And I believe they also use a sound over the phone, like a submarine sonar, the pinging of the sonar rating, to trigger the mind control. And I believe that's what they did with Mark Chapman to kill John Lennon.
Yeah, and Catcher in the Rye, that was a book that he continued reading straight after the murder.
Yeah, I think he carried it with him everywhere. But he'd been given some Beatles tapes which disappeared also, and strangely, and he was a bit of, and they really do apparently recruit them through the YMCA a lot, so they can get particularly gay men that haven't got so close affinity with the family. They can get them to do operations and do things so they don't have a wife to ask against to, or family to, you know, they're going to question what you do. So it's easier to get recruits that way.
Yeah.
Well, that just about does it for another episode of the We Are Change talk show. Remember, this coming Friday is 4/20, April 20th. If you're in Victoria, the venue will be Treasury Gardens, as well as Flagstaff Gardens. Look up the venue in a capital city near you. And be sure to join me next week for another episode of the We Are Change talk show, where we expose corruption, folks, one episode at a time.